Awesome. Wow, so good to be here. Thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity. My name is John Giggy. I'm the founder of 42V. And so basically what that is 4 steps to victory. It's just helping people go from being a victim to being a victor. And so today, I'm going to share my story with you. But I'm going to ask a favor of you guys, if that's okay. You guys probably heard this. John Maxwell does this. Hi, my name is John. I am your friend. And I'm just going to ask if you can just do me a favor, give me your undivided attention for this next 15 minutes. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour out my heart. And I'm going to talk about things that happened to me that this is going to be the first time. Before we go into that, I'm going to share a few key principles. Is one, and I would write this down if you're not familiar with this, is that we all been programmed to fail. I don't know if you guys agree with that. Somebody mentioned Eric Worre yesterday. And Eric Worre says, also he basically says we've been programmed to fail. I like to say that we've been conditioned to fail because there's something that's happening in the conditioning based on trauma, based on experience that we've had. And so that's one truth. And then also 100% of our learning is subconscious, and that is true. And whatever we watch, whatever we read, whatever we listen to, or what we observe, we're learning. Right? Depending on what you're watching, TV, videos, listening to certain music, we're constantly learning. 100% of our learning is subconscious. And then also, many of our setbacks is a result of our stinking thinking, of how we think, and that also dictates our behavior. So, I was born and raised in San Jose, California, raised by my mother, single, who divorced my father at a very young age. And my first experience, I'm going to share with you 4. There's a lot of traumatic experience that I encountered as a child, but I'm going to share with you 4. And the first one was, I kept on telling my mom that I wanted to go see my dad. And I haven't seen him since the divorce. And I remember we were driving down the road, and I told my mom, I want to see my dad. And what happens when a kid keeps on begging, keep on asking, then parents give in. So my mom gave in. So what we end up doing is that we end up driving to my father's apartment, unannounced. He had no idea that I was going to come. And then what happened was my mom sent me to the door by myself. Can you believe that? My mom stayed in the car. I was a little kid, probably around 4 or 5 years old, and I walked up to the door, knocked on it, and then my father's wife answered the door. And as soon as I said, hi, is my daddy here? She slammed the door in my face. I was just so perplexed, so confused, didn't understand what was going on. So what does a child do? Cry. And I just cried my way to the car. We jumped into the vehicle, and my mom drove off. There was a big mistake that my mom failed at. And she failed at pulling over to help me cope with that. And had she done that, then maybe my life would have turned out a little bit different based on that experience. And that was the beginning of rejection in my life. Rejection now became a dominant thought on every aspect of my life growing up. The second event, my mom took me to the babysitter. Before she was heading off to work, she was dropping me off at the babysitter, who I've actually been at this babysitter for many times. However, it's just one night just changed my life completely. My babysitter took advantage of me. He molested me sexually. And that right there is when he robbed me of my child. He interrupted irrevocably, emotionally, and at psychological development. And imagine what that did in my life moving forward. And so that was also other conditioning that was taking place. And I had no idea. I was just a kid. And then the third event, my mom dropped me off at another babysitter. And so my mom worked in the nightclub. She was a waitress, a bartender, so a lot of times she would get off of work from around 2 or 3, so she would drop me off at the babysitter and then come and pick me up. Well, this time, what's supposed to be a semi-sleepover, what ended up happening is my mom never showed up. And I'm sitting here the next day at our friend's house, and my mom hasn't even shown up to pick me up yet. So now I'm wondering what's happening. Day 2, my mom didn't show up. Day 3, my mom didn't show up. At that point, I'm wondering, did my mom leave me? Did my mom abandon me? And all these feelings started kind of going through my mind. And all that I would hear from our friends is that she's okay, that she's going to pick me up soon. And it almost reached about a month that I have not seen my mom. And at that point, I'm pretty much given up. My mom's not coming to pick me up. I experienced abandonment in a huge way, and that is when abandonment became a stronghold in my life. And then the fourth incident was when I was about probably 15 years old, and I was about 11 years old. I was in, it was my birthday, and I was in 5th grade. And so what ended up happening is that we were celebrating my birthday, and then a friend of mine was spending a night, so it was going to be a sleepover. And my mom also had a friend that was visiting from LA. And so we were just kind of doing what we do, celebrating birthdays and just kind of hanging out. My stepdad, on the other hand, was a big drunk. And so he wasn't even there. Then all of a sudden he shows up at the house. I'm like, oh, great, my stepdad's here. And then he gives me my birthday gift. And it was a Schwinn bicycle. And I'm like, I wanted a mongoose, but my dad's giving me a blue Schwinn bicycle. I said, well, it's a bike. So I was still excited. And then, so he was out there. He brought a stranger to the house, never seen before. They're playing billiards, playing pool. They're drunk, they're stumbling. And then finally, they just make their way out, and then they leave. They leave for the day. So now the day is coming to its end. So we're ready to get ready for bed. Me and my friend in my bedroom, and then my mom's friend in the guest bedroom, and my mom in her bedroom. All of a sudden, we were in deep sleep, and I just heard bam, just bang, bang. It was just like, it was gunshots that I was constantly hearing, and that just like woke me up. At the point, at that time, I didn't even know what that was. And I'm frightened, figuring out what's going on. My brain is just like, okay, what do I do? What do I do? I'm a little kid, I'm 11 years old. And then what ended up happening is that my stepdad came home, and he saw my mom run from the master bedroom over to the guest bedroom. And that didn't go well with him. So what ended up happening is he ended up running to his room, grabbed a handgun, went to the guest room, and shot at my mom and her friend. Miraculously, not one bullet hit them. But there were bullet holes on the floor, there were bullet holes on the walls, there were bullet holes on the windows, so there were bullet holes everywhere. I believe he emptied the gun, dropped it, and then my mom's friend kicked the gun under the bed. Danny, at that point, which was my friend, he was standing in the hall, so Jenny, my mom's friend, ended up grabbing Danny, and then they took off, and they hiked for about a quarter of a mile to get to the nearest payphone to call the police. So now what ends up happening is that my mom runs over to my bedroom, and the confrontation continues. And so my stepdad follows, and now I had a billy club beside my bed, so I grabbed it, and I was ready to hit him. And that's when he looked at me and he says, "Don't you dare. I'm going to beat the shit out of you." And at that point, when I saw that, I saw evil in his eyes, and it frightened me so much that I dropped it. And then shortly after that, the police comes in. They come in. I'm watching all this, I'm witnessing all this, and they come in, they grab my stepfather, they drag him literally down the hallway and into the street and into the police car. One of the things that he said that I'll never forget that really shattered me, he yelled and he said, "Johnny, I'm taking back that bike." That broke my heart, because that was my birthday gift, and he was going to take that away from me. And so imagine all those different conditionings that's starting to happen that evening. I had anxiety, PTSD, fear, all sorts of emotions started happening. Even though I kept the bike, he ended up getting locked up, and I still had the bike. However, the damage was already done. And so now, obviously I kept the bike, but I still had to deal with that conditioning that affected me for the rest of my life. So now, moving forward, just those 4 incidences, there's more. It basically conditioned me to become the person that I became afterwards. And now I was just out of control. In 6th grade, started smoking pot for the first time. And then in junior high, barely made it through, cutting all the time. In high school, burning garbage cans, thought I was so cool. Hung out with the rockers, the stoners, smoking pot, partying it up. And then also one of the things that I did too is that I took my truck and I reversed it, and I ended up on top of a Volkswagen Bug, all the way up to where the windshield was at. I was just so out of control. And I was dealing unconditionally with all these emotions that was just running through my mind. And it just started to continue to build up and build up and build up. And then by that point, the principal and the teacher, they pretty much just realized, you know what, this guy's a lost cause. So they kicked me out of high school. So now I have all this free time, partying up more, the drugs become harder, and then I end up being incarcerated multiple times, breaking in the cars. I broke into a house because somebody told me that there were guns in there. And so I went there and smashed all the Christmas presents, the trees, knocked everything down, broke the back door. And when I look back, it just breaks my heart what I did. At that time, I didn't care. I just wanted these guns. I also ended up getting a DUI within 2 months. Can you believe that? A DUI within 2 months. Most people get DUIs maybe after a year or whatnot. They'll get maybe a maximum. I got it within 2 months. And I did that by taking my vehicle onto somebody's lawn. And I four-wheeled on top of all this landscape and almost kind of like going towards the house and almost wrecking into the house, but toward my whole transmission of my Corvette, and I couldn't move, and I was trying to get out. Even then, I remember the firefighters were coming, and they're all like, "Give me the keys, stop. And I'm like, I got it. I'm like, I can see my way out, just give me a chance. And they're all, stop it, and they're yelling at me, and finally they get me to obey them, and then obviously the cops come, and then I'm arrested. That was my first DUI. My second DUI, I flipped my truck on the freeway, and because me and my buddy were driving, and he wanted to go this way, I wanted to go this way. We're both intoxicated, so he grabs the steering wheel, flipped, and I'm sliding down 680 in San Jose. And it's just all these different things that were going on in my life, and I was just totally out of control. But one of the things is that I had a pivotal moment in my life. I had transformation. I had a huge awakening that right there in that moment, all the pain, the suffering, the lack of joy, the lack of peace, the lack of hope, all of that just got squashed. Immediately I had joy. Immediately I had love. Immediately I had hope. Immediately I had peace. And all that just got squashed in one moment. And then from there on, it was all about personal development. It was all about growing myself. And what I had discovered is that all these things that I went through in the past, it is what it is. It happened. It's the event. And the event is true, and that's part of owning up to that. However, the conditioning is a lie. Is everything that we've been taught. We've been taught to fail. We've been taught insecurities. We've been taught to be unsafe. We've been taught abandonment. We've been taught all these different emotions. And when I end up realizing that was all a lie. The event was real. The event was true, but the conditioning was a lie. And that's when I started to experience freedom. So I started to look back at my life, and I started realizing, wow, there was 4 steps that I really went through. And those are the 4 A's. And that first one is awareness. Becoming aware of where you're at. Becoming aware of what has enslaved you for so many years. And then it's acceptance. It's accepting that which you became aware of. And that's the toughest part. Most people get challenged there, and they freeze, and they can't get any further. I tell people, I'll take you to acceptance, but you have to open that door. You have to turn that knob. That is your responsibility. And how do we know that somebody accepted that what they became aware of is they take action. Action is the proof that you've accepted that which you became aware of. And then most importantly, the last one is accountability. That is crucial. Without accountability, there's no movement. In fact, the opposite of accountability is just standing still and not doing anything, not owning up to that responsibility that you have before you. And so accountability is crucial. It's just having somebody standing right next to you to help you get through that and to encourage you and to support you. And so Those are the 4 A's, and that's kind of been my coaching method, is the 4 steps to victory. Now, I just want to leave with you guys, yes, it is true that we've been conditioned to fail. But what is true is that the conditioning is a lie. And once we change that lie, then we change our behavior. And then we change our attitude and we change our outcomes. And so it's important to really recognize that. And also recognize that there is greatness in every one of you. There is potential in every one of you. Some of us, when we ask the question is, what is it that you want to do when you grow up? I don't know. Because the truth is, it's buried deep down into you, and you can't surface that up. But there is greatness. There is something that you want to grow up to be, but we just need to dig deep and get into that. And so I encourage you, find people in your life, find people that can help you with those 4 steps. That's what coaching is for. We have many coaches here. You've already met quite a few of them. Go talk to them. Ask them, say, I need help, or ask for advice, because that's our heart. We want to help. We want to help you. If you ever want to talk, we can talk. You can pull me to the side. But it's important that you do that. And the time is now, right? The time is now. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever sat and pondered how many weeks do you have? If statistically they say that you're going to live about to 75, have you ever calculated how many weeks do you have left to fulfill your goals, to fulfill your dreams? Have you ever thought about that? Have you? Do the math. Figure out how old you are now. Calculate and figure out from 75 years old how many years. For me, I would think it was 20 years that I have left. And then multiply that by 52 weeks in a year. I have a little bit over 1,000 weeks left. But when you run that little formula and you crunch the numbers, it's going to be a huge perspective for you, and you start to realize, I don't have time. There are people out there that need your message. There are people out there that need to hear you. And I think in some cases, if we choose not to step out in faith and go out there and do that, then that person may miss out on the opportunity forever. You might be the only person that can bring that key that they're looking for. And by us not taking action, that person is missing out. There's an audience out there that needs to hear from you. And just know that there's greatness in you, but you just got to take the advantage of the opportunity now. We've heard carpe diem, right? It's very common. Seize the moment of the opportunity today. Do it now. Thank you. Appreciate it.